Tonight on the Daily Wrap, President Obama making a major reversal and announcing today that troops will remain in Afghanistan through 2016. Another congressman wants to get rid of the Benghazi committee. And as violence ensues in Israel, we're going to talk to Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, who is in Jerusalem. We talked to him live tonight. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host Rick Unger. Have you ever been to Afghanistan?
I have not been to Afghanistan. It was fascinating what the president did this morning, however. I give him credit. You know, everybody gets on him for having certain legacy ideas and just trying to stick to them at any cost. He did the right thing, and it's not what he wanted, but he did what he should have done. We'll talk about it more in a moment.
I think you stole one of our guest lines, Carl Higbie, who we're going to announce in a moment in an introduction. But to Mr. Unger's right for now. She's the founder, yes, of the executive director of the Accountability Project. Nomi Konst is back once again.
Not Carl Higbie.
Not Carl Higbie, right, because you wear glasses and he does not. And finally, he's a former Navy SEAL and president of the Citizen League. Carl Higbie, yes, there he is. The aforementioned is back.
And a male.
Looking well.
No glasses.
No glasses.
No glasses.
No
Let's
skirt.
get right to the daily download.
Yep.
Last December, more than 13 years after our nation was attacked by al-Qaeda on 9/11, America's combat mission in Afghanistan came to a responsible end. But, as I've said before, while America's combat mission in Afghanistan may be over, our commitment to Afghanistan and its people endures. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not allow Afghanistan to be used as safe haven for terrorists to attack our nation again. Our forces therefore remain engaged in two narrow but critical missions: training Afghan forces and supporting counterterrorism operations against the remnants of al-Qaeda.
And that was President Obama this morning announcing a new strategy on the war on terror in Afghanistan. Previously, the current commander-in-chief was committed to withdrawing almost all U.S. troops from Afghanistan by the end of the year. That all changed today. America's longest war just got a little longer.
First, I've decided to maintain our current posture of 9,800 troops in Afghanistan through most of next year, 2016. But maintaining our current posture through most of next year, rather than a more rapid drawdown, will allow us to sustain our efforts to train and assist Afghan forces as they grow stronger, not only during this fighting season, but into the next one. Second, I've decided that instead of going down to a normal embassy presence in Kabul by the end of 2016, we will maintain 5,500 troops at a small number of bases, including at Bagram, Jalalabad in the east, and Kandahar in the south. These bases will give us the presence and the reach our forces require to achieve their mission.
And here's a little bit more from the president.
Third, we will work with allies and partners to align the steps I'm announcing today with their own presence in Afghanistan after 2016. And finally, because governance and development remain the foundation for stability and progress in Afghanistan, we will continue to support President Ghani and the National Unity Government as they pursue critical reforms. The more effective these reforms happen, the better off the security situation is going to be.
And this follows an American intel misstep that led to a Doctors Without Borders hospital that was bombed, killing scores of people. Carl Higbie, after the president was elected, one of the first promises that he had, or steps, was to start pulling troops out of Afghanistan. That eventually happened in Iraq. If you were the commander-in-chief, would you have done this?
Yes. And this goes in twofold. And first, I want to say I thoroughly dislike the president, but I do give him credit for doing what is necessary here, and I believe that is necessary. Now, the other half of this mission is to take the shackles off our troops and let them do the job that they are trained to do, not be diplomats. If he still wants to be diplomatic and keep the troops there, then, you know, might as well bring the troops home and send a bunch of diplomats.
It is interesting.
To let them fight war.
92% of all Marine casualties happen in Afghanistan. under the president. Are you saying it's because of the rules of engagements over there that say that they're not on the offensive and they're sitting ducks? Explain exactly why that would be.
So the increased rules of engagement actually started under President Bush, but they became much more stringent under President Obama. And troops aren't allowed to keep their guns loaded sometimes. They're not allowed to be aggressive. They're not even allowed. There's a guy, Clint Lawrence, an Army Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, who is sitting in right now he's sitting in Leavenworth for 2 counts of murder for firing on something that was well within his rules of engagement. And that is because they've put lawyers on the battlefield. If President Obama wants to keep troops on the battlefield, he needs to unshackle them and let them fight war like soldiers.
Rick?
Yeah.
Your thoughts on it? You look like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah,
but
no,
in general, we talk about legacies. You talked about it before, right? And part of his legacy would be, I'm the guy who took all the troops home, or brought them all home from Afghanistan.
Well, that's what he wanted. I mean, when he
Iraq.
set out in his presidency, he wanted to leave America with no ongoing wars. I do agree with Carl. Situations change, things happen. I think he is doing the right thing. I'll tell you what, though, this suggestion that we'll keep him at roughly 10,000 till the end of 2016, then immediately cut it by another half, it's never going to happen. There'll be a new president elected by that time, and he's not going to cut the troop strength unless there's some remarkably amazing
He should never commit to a standard,
you know?
And then project it to the world either.
Well, but they have to. I understand his doing that. It's, you know, I understand your point about the world, but got to remember, a lot of people who support Barack Obama were very, very disappointed with what they heard this morning.
Yep. Yeah.
So I do understand why he would do that, and he knows as well as what I'm saying here that when we get into January of 2017 and we have a new president elected, he's not going to change the troop strength. He's going to let them do it. Maybe a Republican, maybe more troops
Rick
going.
just gave away the vote, by the way. He just said he as a president.
Yeah.
Well,
Discounting Carly Fiorina.
He was talking
exactly.
about
Regardless of politics, I mean, war is never popular, whether you're Republican or Democrat. I know that we like to play these hawkish games on the right and the left, but most people...
Popular in 2003.
Well, it was a different situation, but in post-2005, it is not popular among people. It does not poll well. Aside from that, a friend of mine he coordinates NGOs, and he's been doing this for the past 7 years in Afghanistan, and he had to leave this year. He moved away from Afghanistan, and he went into a different territory to start expanding his missions. Okay. Because NGOs, it's not safe enough for NGOs in Afghanistan anymore. And what that means is that you can't have the intel that you normally get for situations like the Doctors Without Borders situation. You know, you don't have the infrastructure in place. You don't have the operations in place for these places, for Afghanistan to have economic growth. You know, there's a lot of investment in natural gas and natural and other, what's it called? Natural, give me the words, thank you, resources. Jeez, long couple of days.
One of those days.
Exactly, for natural resources from China, from Iran, etc. And you need stability. And if those troops, you know, maybe security escalation has gone up because of the fact that there was this announcement, but those troops being there is just a psychological way for security to be amped up.
Unfortunately, you mentioned the accidental bombing of the Doctors Without Borders. There's more to this story to come, folks. I am not convinced it was accidental. I think there's much more we're going to learn about this, and not like what we hear.
I think they're idiots for being there in the first place. So, you
well,
know.
Idiots isn't the word I would use.
They're brave people who are going to help people.
You go to a bad place, you ask for something like this. I'm sorry, it's unfortunate, and it really is. But you know what? They shouldn't be there in the first place.
I think traditionally it's pretty safe to have a hospital with Doctors Without Borders.
I mean,
war-torn region.
You go into any war. We've always had
dead.
doctors without, you know, doing this, and good for them for doing it. But I think what we're going to find out is that they believe that there were terrorists or whoever using that hospital, that they didn't believe that it was actually doctors doing good work
doctors
there.
were
We're not going to like how this story is going to turn out.
Doctors were tweeting from there, though, saying that there are no terrorists here, and please don't bomb us, and here are our exact coordinates.
But if you believe that they are, then it's not a hard leap to go, well, yeah, someone's got a gun to somebody's head and say, tweet out that this is a doctor, you know?
Okay.
Not hard to imagine. I just think
with
we're
Americans there?
Yeah. I think we're going to find out that there's more to this as well.
Yeah,
Just
I
to
agree
set the
with
table, and we only got about 20 seconds, for eventual ground troops or more troops also being added to Iraq as well. I mean, that's not exactly stable either.
I believe that's starting an additional war. I don't think it's the same war anymore. I think it's been so divided, and it would be a whole new set of rules and engage a whole new war.
I think they're going to try to get other countries to step in there.
Yeah, we've been hearing that a lot, but Ain't happening, I don't think. So share your thoughts on President Obama's announcement this morning by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up next, another congressman hints at the real reason behind the Benghazi committee. May or may not be political. We'll tell you what. Stay tuned.
Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was unbeatable, right? But we put together a Benghazi special committee, a select committee. What are her numbers today? Her numbers are dropping. Why? Because she's untrustable. But no one would have known any of that had happened had we not fought and made that happen. Good.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. As if House Majority Leader and one-time Speaker in waiting Kevin McCarthy didn't do enough already to bolster the Clinton campaign's efforts to put the email scandal behind them, now we have a second Republican stepping up to call the Benghazi committee little more than an exercise in bringing down Hillary Clinton. And this time, it's no accident.
And Kevin McCarthy basically blew himself up with that comment over the Benghazi committee. You know, which sometimes the biggest sin you can commit in D.C. is to tell the truth. You know, and I this may not be politically correct, but I think that there was a big part of this investigation that was designed to go after people, and an individual, Hillary Clinton.
That was Republican Congressman Richard Hanna of New York, ostensibly telling it like it is when it comes to the true motives of the Benghazi Special Committee. Hanna's remarks come on the heels of allegations made in a lawsuit by a one-time Benghazi Special Committee staffer, Bradley Podliska, who claims he was fired because he wouldn't focus his efforts on bringing down Mrs. Clinton.
This has become a partisan investigation. I do not know the reason for the hyper-focus on Hillary Clinton.
While congressional committees have long been used by both Democrats and Republicans for partisan purposes, are these allegations particularly troublesome given that 4 Americans died in the attack on our facility in Benghazi? Joe?
I can't answer that question. What I can answer is that the Republican Party is stupid.
Well,
they are handing.
You know, I'll enjoy
Hillary
it if
Clinton,
you can go a little deeper.
Sure, I will. I'll be happy to. Hillary Clinton, during the debate 2 nights ago, must have brought up on 3 or 4 different occasions when you bring up her email. She could fall back on this and point every time. See, it's just political. I didn't do anything wrong. Right. It gives her an out. It makes her the victim. And the fact that with McCarthy, I get that he didn't speak elegantly. Right? And untrustable, I don't think is a word, by the way.
It's not. He made up a new word.
Right, he made up a new word, and it was inelegant. So you could say, all right, I guess I got his point that she's untrustworthy, and we're going to reveal the truth via this committee. Right. But this was calculated, this radio interview, from this nobody. Right? And I can guarantee you there'll be a campaign ad or Hillary Clinton talking about it at least 7 or 8 times during her testimony, saying, you guys are just out to get me. We all know why we're here. And you know what? It'll end up being going to her advantage, ultimately, politically.
Carl, there are some people who continue to say that the hearings, actually Mrs. Clinton is appearing next Tuesday. Tomorrow, her top aide, Huma Abedin, will be in a secret session with them. A lot of people are saying, what is the point? Because no matter what the committee says, no matter what they ask Hillary Clinton at this point, it has been so damaged by these remarks. Why bother?
Well, they're hoping for the home run at the end. I think they're hoping to see that email.
You think it's a Hail Mary pass?
I don't think it's a Hail Mary. And look, you know what? I believe that nearly every one of these things, left or right, is politically motivated. And especially, I think people saw the fact that she was going to run for president. This was their chance to smash and grab and keep her down. But the fact is, there are guys out there like Trey Gowdy and people like that who genuinely want to know, and I genuinely want to know. Non-political, you know what? I'd love to see someone fry for the fact that 2 of my brothers are dead.
I understand, but Nomi, you know, this is, I believe, the 9th Benghazi committee.
More than Watergate. More committee time than Watergate.
And
really, wow.
Many of them, I think all of them, in fact, have been under Republican leadership.
Yeah.
Is it not at some point fair to say, guys, if you couldn't find out something you're looking for in 8, why are you going to find it out in number 9?
I think there's a few things here. First thing, from day one I've said if Republicans want to take this seriously, they shouldn't push this hard. And if they really wanted to take her down during an election, if that was the goal, they would have brought this up in the general election, not in the primary. Because in the primary, right now, the Benghazi, whether I actually think there should be a real investigation as well, having worked in Libya and understanding that like they are uncovering more and more. Exactly. But regardless of that, if they wanted to take this seriously, they wouldn't have brought it up in a primary season when Democrats are incredibly skeptical of the Benghazi. I mean, whether you're pro-Hillary or against Hillary, there's no question this has been politicized. I question who this guy was. I think that Hillary and Bill Clinton have a track record of these types of scandals.
This guy is a Republican.
No, I know he's a... No, let me finish. I'm saying that they have a track record of working with Republicans. I mean, they have a long history of scandals where David Brock was against them and now is their biggest supporter. Come on, there's like 50 of these guys.
I doubt that they were able to reach a Republican congressman from New York.
Last thing that drove me crazy was that on stage, she conflated the email question with Benghazi. We've talked about this, how the email situation is more, we believe, more about the Clinton Foundation and where that money was coming from rather than Benghazi. And she went right to Benghazi because she wanted to avoid the email investigation, which is a real investigation by the FBI.
Joe,
she said.
Yeah. What she said?
Yeah. I agree with Hannah.
Actually, I agree with Hannah too, and that's what I was going to ask Joe about. Look, and it's not just about Republicans. You know, Hannah's telling the truth.
Yeah, I agree.
All of these committees are, or at least most of them, are often politically motivated. They're there to cause a problem for the other side. Mm-hmm. Can we get to a point because of this where Democrats just don't start sniping at the Republicans, but everybody can say enough already? Why are you wasting our taxpayer dollars doing these investigations that are aimed at shooting down somebody who maybe I support and I'm paying for you to take it down? And that goes both ways. Both sides do it.
Let me quote Austin Powers. That train has sailed. All right. We are so polarized and so beyond that, right? Do you honestly believe that the Democrats act no better? I mean, this goes both ways. You know that.
But what a waste.
It's a waste, yes. And I agree with you in
Trump
principle.
2016.
Yeah, Trump 2016.
Throw that right in. All right, enough. Obviously, we're done with this conversation. What do you make of the latest admission of the Benghazi Committee's mission? If we want to know what you think, let us know at newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up, we're going to talk with our friend Rabbi Brad Hirschfeld about violence in Israel.
Situation in Israel right now is becoming dire. Just last night, violence broke out once again near Damascus Gate Plaza, that's in Jerusalem, where police shot and killed a man armed with a knife. Earlier in the day, a 72-year-old woman was stabbed at a bus stop. Over the weekend, Israeli police killed 2 Palestinians who stabbed police officers and other civilians. Although Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered for police reinforcements in Jerusalem, violent, random attacks are becoming the norm. Joining us now from Jerusalem is friend to the Daily Wrap, editor of the WisdomDaily.com, and Washington Post contributor, Brad Hirschfeld. Brad, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Happy to be with you, Joe.
So earlier in the day, State Department spokesman John Kirby said, and these are his words, concerned about reports that could indicate the potential use of excessive force. If somebody's running at you with a knife and you're a police officer in Israel, what else are they supposed to do?
I have the foggiest idea. I don't use this language lightly, but I think some of the comments that have been made by Kirby and by Secretary of State Kerry, creating kind of moral equivalence here, is really nothing less than obscene. The fact of the matter is that stabbings, shootings, bus hijackings, and using cars as weapons, ramming them into people simply waiting for a bus. And I want to be clear, not there's any difference, but not only soldiers and military personnel. Many more civilians have been stabbed, more civilians have been killed. This kind of language is nuts. It's not that I'm saying there aren't things that Israel can and should do better and Israel is blameless all the time. I don't believe that. I don't think it's the case. But what's going on now is terror straight out. And in the words of one 13-year-old terrorist, 13 years old, who went looking to stab when the police interviewed him as he was being treated and cared for in an Israeli hospital, he said, it's simple. We were going out to stab Jews.
Brad, it's Rick. You know, this is one time where you and I are clearly going to agree. I've seen the videos. There's no question here whatsoever who's causing this problem and the fact that the Israeli folks are just trying to defend themselves. My question for you is this. What is the tone, what is the tenor of what we're seeing on the streets? Are people taking special precautions to protect themselves? What's life like in Israel today?
Look, Israelis are very good at continuing, keeping on, keeping on. I will tell you in all candor, as it's already midnight here for me, that I'm with a group and I walked them back from a restaurant a few blocks from our hotel. And it requires a certain situational awareness, and I feel a certain obligation for their safety. They're a group of Americans visiting here, but they were willing to come and they were feeling good. On the other hand, I can tell you that in general, Thursday nights, which is a big night out in the streets of Jerusalem, it was relatively quiet. And that means that people are feeling spooked. There's definitely tension. What there isn't is hostility to Arabs in general. What there isn't are the kind of racist responses that could easily happen when there's racist terrorism. So I think that people are trying to balance appropriate vigilance without letting rage or anger take over, because the truth is it doesn't help, it only hurts, and it really isn't the general response of Israelis.
It's interesting to hear you say that, Brad. I kind of noticed watching Prime Minister Netanyahu speak on this today, I found him to be unusually measured. I don't want to say casual because that doesn't state it fairly, but he just seemed to be behaving in a way where he was trying to calm it down instead of amp it up, which I thought was terrific. I think a boss is trying to amp it up. So it's very good to hear you say.
I think you're absolutely right, Rick.
That,
I think in the first days, by the way, that was a little less true, and I was a little bit concerned. But I think really here, right, left, and center understand that care and vigilance are the appropriate responses, that where need be, when deadly force and terror is used, you need to position the appropriate security forces and deal with that. In fact, even since the report that Joe gave, because it is the later part of the day here, there was another attempt to stab two people outside of Damascus Gate at the northeast corner of the old city of Jerusalem. The terrorist was neutralized, but again, no one is chanting and excited about that. That's a necessity. The easiest way to help Palestinians not to be shot by security forces right now is don't have them run at people and try and stab them in the head, which has been sort of de rigueur here for the last 2 weeks.
WisdomDaily.com editor, Washington Post contributor Brad Hirschfield, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate you making the time.
Thank you. Good to talk to you all, as always.
Sure.
Take care, Brad.
All right, so we don't have too much time here, but how does this all end?
You know, what I find particularly concerning this time around is the approach that Abbas has taken to this. It's like he's given up, thrown his hands in the air, and he's just accusing Israel of stuff that is so silly, because it's not what's happening. We've got the video proof. It's these Palestinian kids that have run amok. He's got to knock it off, or he's going to make for a much worse situation than it already is.
Absolutely. Nomi would love to get your thoughts on it, but unfortunately we're out of time. Fortunately, you're here for the rest of the show,
Yes.
so we'll have some fun. So, what do you make of the violence in Israel right now? Let us know at newsmaxtv.com/comments right below. Coming up, former Speaker of the House, Denny Hastert, is prepared to plead guilty in court. We have the details. Don't go anywhere.
We've just received more video of Hastert arriving at the courthouse in Chicago today. Take a look at this. You see him there, the car arriving at the courthouse. You'll see Dennis Hastert get out. There he is. Walk into the court. These proceedings are going to be taking place fairly soon. Obviously, a lot of media there, photographers jostling to ask him some questions and get through not a pleasant experience, clearly, for the former Speaker of the House of Representatives as he makes his way slowly inside that building for this court appearance.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. The longest-serving Republican Speaker of the House in American history, Denny Hastert, once stood among the most powerful political players in the nation. Today, his reputation and his legacy are in tatters as we learn that he will plead guilty to federal charges of illegally structuring bank withdrawals and lying to federal officials. However, it's what lies behind the actual charges that have brought the great shame to the once highly respected legislator. It is reported that Hastert's bank violations involved illegally withdrawing some $1.8 million to pay off a victim of sexual crimes allegedly committed by Hastert when he was a high school wrestling coach and teacher in Yorkville, Illinois. Had Speaker Hastert gone to trial on the charges, the more sordid details of the allegations would likely have become public. Now, as a result of his entering into a plea agreement with the prosecution, the public will likely never know the facts that lay behind the charges. So does the fact that Hastert ran for office during his career as a family values guy make this sad situation even more egregious, Carl Higbee?
Yeah. This is political beltway BS. I mean, that's what this is, and this is what people are tired of. And not to go beat a dead horse here, but that's why people like Carson and Carly and Trump are surging the polls, because they're not politicians like this guy.
Well, are you saying that they're not representing family values as well? I mean, aside from Trump, who...
No, this is politics as usual. I mean, look, politicians on both sides of the aisle are just consistently getting wrapped up in scandal after scandal after scandal.
So if Ben Carson today, just hypothetical, if Ben Carson or even Carly Fiorina today, if you found out, this is hypothetical, like Carly Fiorina had an abortion after making those comments, would that not be politics as usual?
I think it would be poor decision making. I think it would probably be very poorly received. But this is, typical.
But to be fair, you can't make up something like that and say, would it be that? Because there's no evidence or reason at all to suspect.
But we're not in a court of law. Essentially what I'm saying is, once you're in the political arena and you start to make bold declarations about values, it's, almost always these values-based politicians have some piece of dirt that comes out eventually, and a lot of them pay it off over the years.
That's a big piece of dirt. That's
that's a big piece of dirt. That's a bad one.
Yeah.
That's a bad one. But that's what happens when you make these bold declarations instead of just being honest about who you are or being a good, wholesome person. And thank goodness the Republican Party has shifted on LGBT issues and a lot of the things that people held behind the scenes because they wanted to run as a Republican financially.
To be fair here, I mean, we are condemning all politicians. Now, there was a period of time back actually in the late 90s where this was happening a lot. It started with Jim Wright, who was the Democratic Speaker of the House. He had to step down.
Livingston.
That came later.
Yeah.
He stepped down because he was saying that he was selling books. What he was really doing was getting money for giving speeches he wasn't supposed to be giving. Then you have Newt, who didn't have to step down, but he was not censored but sanctioned by the Ethics Committee for violations that he committed. Then you had Livingston, who was supposed to take Newt's place as Speaker. He had to back out and give up his seat because he got caught having an affair, another family values guy. It goes on and on and on. And that leads me to this question. I'll give it to you, Joe.
Sure.
Did the court do us any favors in Hastert's case by agreeing to a plea bargain? By having the plea bargain, yes, he'll plead guilty, which would imply that he was guilty. But we will never really know what happened here. Had it gone to trial, and I'm not saying that I want salacious details, that's what I'm looking for, but I kind of like to know what this man was really all about. He was a major part of American history.
But it also protects the victim.
Yeah.
It does. Exactly. But the victim I'm not that sensitive to because he was holding the guy up for $3 million.
True.
Of which he got $1.8 million.
It was the only leverage that Hastert had left, that, okay, at least I'm not going to let the deep, Sandusky-like kind of details, Jerry Sandusky details come out here. Plus, he used hush money. And when you use hush money, you keep everything hush.
But doesn't the American public have a right to know this? And the only reason we're not going to find out what our Speaker of the House, for the longest period of time in American history, Republican Speaker, we're never going to know who he was now. We know there's a lot more to him, but we're never going to know who he was.
Is he also hiding additional victims, though?
Right,
Could that be?
That's a bigger
Where, in
question.
his basement? What do you mean?
Is this the
No, yes, under the floorboards. No, are there more victims in this case that he just doesn't want to have it be public so they don't start coming out?
Yeah, I think we have the broad sketches here at this point.
Well, we think we have the broad sketches. We don't know what's true and what isn't, but I take your point. It's a very sad story. What do you think about Denny Hastert's decision to plead guilty to illegally structuring bank withdrawals and lying to federal officials? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Let us know what you think. Coming up next, time to read some of your viewer comments. Stay with us.
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Let's read some of your viewer comments. First up, we have some thoughts about the Center for Security Policy video we showed you last night. Arthur says, Mr. Unger, you live in a bubble. He's Bubble Boy. Muslims do not interact with the American people. They are bent on changing our country to Sharia.
Gee, it's quite a bubble, considering that I'm having dinner tonight with a buddy of mine who's a Muslim. and we're going to a regular restaurant where other people go. So, you know, someone's telling me to explain the video, the whole 4-minute video. Basically, it was a video that's suggesting that the United Nations is sending way too many Muslims here through their program of settlement, and that it's going to ruin America. How's that? Gary says, after listening to Rick Unger's support of the refugee crisis, actually I don't think I did, I believe he is very naive about what is happening today. The Muslim population when he was in high school is very different than today. I believe the refugee movement is a Trojan horse, covering for ISIS combatants coming into this and other countries. Just think, if only 10% of the young Muslims are ISIS, it's time to wake up. Trojan horse, huh? You've been listening to some strange people. Carl, what do you think of that?
Well, I think that by many studies, 350 million Muslims are somewhat radicalized.
Yeah.
So you know.
And by the studies that we talked about last night, by 2030, the total Muslim population of all the Americas, North America, South America, Central America, will be 0.5%, 0.5% of the whole population. So use those numbers and you begin to see that maybe we're getting a little bit carried away. But this Trojan horse thing, seriously, people who have been bombed out of their house, not even by terrorists, but by their government, you think they're Trojan horses because they'd like to, like, you know, eat.
But look at historically where look at Great Britain, where there's entire communities that have taken over.
We're not Great Britain, though.
I know, but you know what? We're not far behind them.
Actually, we're very far behind them.
They're migrating over land, and it is slightly easier to migrate into, and they're opening up their borders, whereas we're only opening up a couple 100,000 a year, and that's the most ever. And you have to go through background checks, you have to get on a plane, you have to go through.
And let me
just say, I don't really care for the Muslim religion.
Let me add this: we are way far behind them. In fact, the only two nations in the industrial world that have less Muslims than us are Poland and Malta. We are well behind those European countries.
Aside of Malta.
So we've got to look. Everybody can think what they think about this, but let's base it on real facts.
Malta's a country?
Apparently, it is.
I thought it was like
they made the
block.
Popeye movie there. It had
it's my backyard.
All right, good point. Anyway, Dan says what isn't being said is Islam is determined to be the only religion in the world, and that, according to the Quran, other faiths are to be converted or subjugated. That's another word for beheading.
Yeah. Well, okay. Michael R. says there is an Islamic extremism problem in the world. Just look at the incidents you pointed out in Germany and other EU countries. There is no way to vet these immigrants, says the FBI. That's why we are more concerned about this particular group. I don't think anybody's saying we shouldn't be concerned about extremists. And yes, you're right, there are more Muslim extremists in the world than anything else. But that doesn't mean that we have to ban every Muslim who might want to live in this country peacefully and become part of our society, because there's some other people, very bad people out there.
I'm not saying it's
by the way, should we throw the ones we have out,
I'm not
the ones
saying
who were
ban
born
them,
here?
but it is our right, and I believe it is my duty as a veteran and somebody who fought against Muslim extremists to be critical and to be keep an even eye on this stuff. And I'm very skeptical of people who practice Islam.
What I want to know, Rick, and everybody here, please answer this question, because
By the way, that you do realize that's uniquely un-American.
Yeah.
So you can't say you believe in the Constitution and say, I don't like
how
this
many
religion in my
Christians
country.
flew planes into buildings and
how many Christians blew up the Oklahoma City bombing? I'm sorry, wasn't he a Christian?
Was that a plane? I'm sorry.
Oklahoma City bombing, the largest terrorist attack prior to 9/11,
so that's your
was a Christian.
Point of demarcation,
so I was just talking about
versus car.
But recently,
no, Carl, you're not going to get away with that. That's silly.
Since we started the war on terror,
that's silly.
Flat out fear mongering.
Who are we fighting here? We're fighting Islam.
Come on. If you fly a plane and you do it, you're bad. If
we're
you
not
do
fighting Christians in Iraq.
If you do it with a truck, you're not.
We're using religion as an excuse.
We gotta go. If you want to weigh in on any of the issues we discuss here on the show, this amiable show, be sure to send us your comments. Yay or nay is coming up after the break. But first, did you know if you suffer cardiac arrest outside of a hospital, you have just a 7% chance of survival? Heart disease kills more people than any other medical condition in the United States each year. And no one is more aware of this fact than world-renowned cardiologist Dr. Chauncey Crandall, who has dedicated the last 30 years of his career to helping his patients win the fight against heart disease. And that's why he has written this best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure. The Simple Heart Cure reveals Dr. Crandall's groundbreaking 90-day program that helps stop and actually reverse heart disease. you'll discover how to slash your risk of a deadly heart attack by 61%, 8 steps to safely lower your blood pressure, proven ways to banish your bad cholesterol, strategies to unclog your arteries without surgery, plus much more. This book retails for $24.95, but you can get your copy of Dr. Crandall's The Simple Heart Cure free with this offer. Just go online to newsmax.com/cureall or call 1-800-524-8836. Well, shut the front door. You came back for a little more. But forget a little. You're about to get a lot as we explore our favorite stories of the day, courtesy of Yay or Nay. And first up, Donald Trump posted a short ad to Instagram today saying one Bernie Sanders would be weak against ISIS because he'd let Black Lives Matter protesters hijack his rally. A few months ago, Sanders was in Seattle, you may recall, and Black Lives Matter protesters demanded their voices be heard, and with almost no resistance, the Sanders campaign acquiesced, and Black Lives Matter took over the mic and the rally altogether. At the time, Trump slammed Sanders, but this new ad takes things one step further.
The world is a dangerous place. We need a tough, strong leader. And it's not this guy.
Tremendous music, and the voiceover was just plain dark and evil. Anyway, is this a fair shot Trump is taking at Bernie Sanders here, Mr. Unger?
Oh, it's ridiculous. Of course not. You know, what happened there was probably the better part of discretion to do exactly what Bernie did. What does Donald want? Well, he probably does want it, a rumble at a Sanders rally.
That just happened at a Trump rally yesterday.
Yeah. Did he like it? No, he didn't. You know, and he probably didn't use the judgment that Bernie used. So, no, that's a pretty silly commercial.
Okay. Nomi?
I think he's trying to do there are three things either happening here. He wants to fundraise, even though he's self-funding, he still needs to fundraise.
We know he's fundraising.
Exactly. Off of socialism and against capitalism, which is what he stands for.
Calling Bernie a communist.
A communist, or whatever his next rhetoric is.
Maniac.
The second thing is he's run out of enemies. Clearly. He has no one else to make fun of. Who's the next person? Martin O'Malley or Lincoln Chafee?
But don't you find it interesting he went after Bernie Sanders, who didn't have the greatest debate performance in the eyes of some?
This is the third point is he is trying to prop Bernie Sanders up so that Hillary gets pushed down a little bit because he wants to take Hillary down.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, by focusing on him, he props him up?
Yep.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
That's why they pay me the big campaign consultant bucks.
Exactly. The glasses.
And
so cerebral.
It's not just on, and I get smart.
Yeah, it's not just a prop. Anyway, another week, another potential career-ending tweet by a member of the media. Today's Exhibit A is a New York Times staffer who tweeted out, "F you, Jeb Bush," on Tuesday before quickly deleting the tweet. And fortunately, the Blaze's Oliver Darcy drew attention to the tweet and actually took a screenshot of it before it was deleted, and there you see it right there. Richardson is the assistant news director of the Totally Objective, unbiased old gray lady. Yay or nay question: should this Times staffer be fired?
I don't know if fired, but certainly disciplined. That was completely
suspended?
Something. It was completely inappropriate.
Are you just amazed as a member of the media yourself
that
this is a megaphone and people are paying attention, and you got to know that that's going to get you in trouble? You may believe it, that's what you believe, then fine, say it privately, but why does this keep happening every week?
I'll have fights with people from time to time, mostly not on Twitter, but I would never say something disparaging, certainly about a candidate. That's my job. My job is to be exactly the opposite.
You're so good. I just want to know what time of day that tweet was sent, if anybody can tell. It might just be drunk
it's at night. You're overserved. You send bad tweets.
Drunk tweeting is not an excuse.
Well, that's true, but it seems to be the reason. So finally, Lincoln Chafee has been a senator, governor, and mayor. Impressive stuff on the LinkedIn, indeed. But after raising just $30,000 total and having one of the worst debate performances since James Stockdale, or at least Rick Perry, the wolves in the media are out asking him again to end his campaign.
Here's what worries me, Governor, that because of your distinguished career, you're going to wind up looking silly if you keep going on like this. At what point will you decide, you know what, there are other things for me to do instead of a futile effort to try to get the Democratic presidential nomination? So at what point will you drop out?
I'm in it as far as I can continue to raise these issues. They're important, and I feel strongly about that.
Only people listen.
Okay, so we have, that's a good point, Rick. So we have a couple of comparisons as far as Mr. Chafee. He does look a little bit like Steve Doocy now, doesn't he? Doocy, of course, is from Fox and Friends. There it is. He also looks like somebody who would run a funeral home, and we actually have pictures to prove that. And definitely somebody who looks like he would kill Jon Snow. There it is, even though Jon Snow may not be dead.
What about grown-up Howdy Doody?
Or grown-up Howdy Doody, yes. Anyway, that's our show for tonight. I'm sorry, Nomi. On behalf of Rick Unger and the rest of our panel, thank you for joining us tonight. Steve Ballsberg, that's next.